Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Charlene Sani, part of the Progress Sitefinity team. Today, I am privileged to have the Lapero team, a premium partner and digital agency with Progress. Our topic today is utilizing .NET Core, navigating the future. And we are recording today's webinar. You'll receive a link via email after the session. Also, feel free to be part of the conversation, engage in chat, ask questions, and connect with Lapero to continue on the conversation. I'll turn it over to the Lapero team to introduce themselves and move forward with the topic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charlene. We appreciate it. I'm Jordan Hood, Lapero's Director of Business Development and Strategic Partnership. We're beyond excited to host today's webinar. To give you guys a little bit of a background on who we are a subsidiary of MHP TMSI, which is a nationally recognized data-driven consulting firm and tech incubator based in Little Rock, Arkansas. We do specialize in software as a service, offering state-of-the-art web development, technology solutions, UX research, UI design, prototyping, and technical consulting services while working in a variety of different industries, including but not limited to government, travel and tourism, healthcare, e-commerce, legal, retail, banking, and education. We design and develop innovative strategies for a digital-first world. And today you'll hear from Derek Kuhn, which is our Senior Solutions Architect, Russ Yates, which is our DevOps Manager, and Alex Hood, which is our President and CEO. Here's a quick overview of today's webinar. We'll begin with an overview of .NET Core and transition into why .NET Core makes sense from different perspectives and why it's a strategic choice for new projects. From there, we'll provide insights into the future of MVC and the impact of the .NET Core Renderer. We'll wrap up with a Q&A session to answer any questions that you might have. For now, Derek will provide an overview of .NET Core. Derek?
Thank you, Jordan. When talking about .NET Core, we first need to look at two fundamental questions when it comes to the system: what it is and why it matters. Let's start with what it is. .NET Core represents a sophisticated, free, and open source framework engineered by Microsoft, explicitly tailored for the development of contemporary, high-performance applications. This framework is a reinvented iteration of the traditional .NET framework, emphasizing a streamlined, modular, and adaptable architecture. The core components of .NET Core encompass an advanced runtime, a comprehensive suite of libraries, and a versatile development environment. This environment is conducive to a variety of programming languages, including C#, Visual Basic, and F#. Notably, .NET Core is architecturally designed to operate seamlessly across diverse platforms such as Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, thereby facilitating the creation of an extensive array of applications, encompassing web and desktop applications, as well as microservices. A principal advantage of .NET Core lies in its modular design. The design principle allows developers to selectively incorporate only the essential components pertinent to their specific application. Consequently, this modularity results in a more efficient, lightweight framework that delivers enhanced performance. Moreover, .NET Core has been optimized to surpass the .NET framework in several performance metrics, offering expedited startup times and reduced memory consumption, thereby streamlining the application development and execution. And to talk about from a business perspective and how that matters, I'm going to turn it back over to Jordan and Alex.
Thank you, Derek. Yeah, so why .NET Core from a business perspective? We're going to go over a few advantages of .NET Core from a business perspective, and we want to talk about a few of those right now a little bit more in depth. So .NET Core's cross-platform capability means that businesses can develop a single application that runs on multiple platforms, such as Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, reducing the need for separate development projects and teams for each platform. This ultimately results in reduced development costs. And an improved time to market is something that we're all after as businesses. With its powerful tooling and robust libraries, .NET Core does enable rapid application development. This can significantly shorten the development cycle, which allows businesses to launch their products or services faster. And enhancing performance and scalability is something we're always after as businesses and business owners as well. The high performance and scalability of .NET Core applications mean that businesses can handle more transactions and user requests with less computational resources, which is really crucial for high-load applications like e-commerce platforms, financial services, and large-scale enterprise applications. And when we look into building anything, we really want to future-proof. So future-proof technology is something that we look into often as a business. And by investing in .NET Core, it's actively maintained and updated by Microsoft. Businesses are aligning with a technology that is forward-looking and continuously evolving, which is really future-proofing their tech stack. And lower maintenance costs are always something that we're after as a business as well. Modular nature of .NET Core and its support for microservices architecture makes applications easier to update and maintain. This can lead to lower long-term maintenance costs and smoother updates and upgrades. Alex?
Thanks, Jordan. Well, next we're going to talk about security features. I mean, a day doesn't go by when we hear about a breach or security vulnerability. And so .NET Core provides a robust security features, which is obviously essential for business applications, especially those that are dealing with sensitive customer data or financial transactions or PII. Next is a large talent pool. As .NET Core is a popular framework, there is a large pool of developers skilled in it. This makes it easier for businesses to find and recruit talent for the development projects, and you have a much larger pool to pull from than some other competing technologies. Another one, which is one of my favorites, is cloud integration. As Lapero, we use Azure very exclusively with a lot of our .NET Core applications. It's a great cloud platform, and .NET Core seamlessly integrates with it with other cloud platforms as well, just like I just mentioned at Microsoft Azure. It enables businesses to leverage the cloud for enhanced performance, scalability, reduced infrastructure costs. If your application needs more resources, Azure allows the ability to scale up or scale out the application to meet those demands, and then scale back down as needed. Next is, really going to be enterprise level support. Being a Microsoft product, .NET Core comes with the option of enterprise level support, which is a very crucial factor for businesses in need of reliable and timely technical assistance. And finally, community and the ecosystem. Just like WordPress, really its strength is its community, open source nature. The strong community of .NET Core and the ecosystem mean businesses can leverage the wealth of third-party tools, libraries, extensions that will accelerate development and integrate with existing systems. By leveraging .NET Core, we can enjoy a combination of reduced operational costs from a business standpoint, improved efficiency, and the ability to stay competitive in a rapidly evolving technological landscape. We use this in our own company as a practice where we have .NET Core applications internally that we use that have made a world of a difference when it comes to the efficiency that we can do internal processes and the ability to get those stood up quickly. And that is one thing that I believe Russ is going to talk about next when he talks about from a DevOps perspective. Go ahead, Russ.
Thank you, Alex. So from a DevOps perspective, .NET Core has made major strides in a lot of different areas. So obviously the first one is .NET Core can run as fast or faster than .NET 4, which was the previous legacy that was Windows only, and PHP and many other languages. The nature of it being compiled is what gives it that speed. The built-in dependency injection doesn't sound like a big thing, but being able to write less code to do more means that you need fewer development resources to make more applications, to make more application logic. It's very, very easy to reuse it. It's very easy to tie it in. An ORM that's built into .NET is the Entity Framework, which has support for all kinds of databases, including non-Microsoft databases such as SQLite, MySQL, MongoDB, PostgreSQL, and a lot more. And they're adding more every day. And this shields the developer from having to write those manual SQL statements. And it just makes development a lot quicker and a lot simpler. One of my favorite advantages of it is I like being able to unit test. The .NET Core framework, being open source, can work both with Microsoft's proprietary unit testing and with open source unit testing, such as XUnit or InUnit. And being able to test both the front end and the back end at a code level makes it so reliable when it comes out, because it's already gone through those checks and balances before they ever see the light of day. And it's all automated, which is a big thing. Next, it's open source. And, I believe they touched on it earlier. Being open source means that there's a lot of community involvement. There's a lot of being able to get not just new features, but also get the features that we have to run faster. There is constantly improvements going in to make it faster at an enterprise level. These aren't, some college kid sitting in his basement. Like, these are adult professionals who are using this tool to run businesses with. So the next thing is the compiled security. Having the compilation security basically means that you can't just jump on a server and change stuff and it reflect immediately on a live site. That's a big deal when it comes to, you talk about, oh, well, I've been hacked, and, how many times have you seen other CMSs that, get hacked, and they, the hackers take over the website, take their data? That's less likely in .NET, which is one of the reasons why enterprise companies use it almost exclusively. We have built a lot of our internal tools, like Alex said, based on .NET Core. We've used it with MVC. We've used it with Angular, which is an SPA modules. We've done some with other frameworks. Like, it's compatible with all the different front-end technologies. It's compatible with React, Vue. I believe they're working on a Next.js implementation. It's moving in that direction so that you can use a separate front end and back end. From a deployment standpoint, being able to automate and being able to make changes go live with minimal involvement is a big deal. It speeds up our development ecosystem really, really quickly. No longer are there days where you're having to having to physically drop a folder of files on a server and say, okay, it's going. So being able to have an open ecosystem that allows you to automate deployments on any system, whether it's Azure, AWS, homegrown, any of these, Linode or anything, it's all flexible and it's all able to be done with .NET Core to help you not be locked into one server environment. The Docker and the containers, being able to containerize it just makes development so much easier. You can use that orchestration for the Kubernetes, being able to host it on Kubernetes, which we do some Kubernetes, and hosting it makes deployment even easier because you can automate all of that stuff. And when you can automate all of that stuff, and when you can automate that stuff, and you can take development time out of it, the cost of development and hosting goes way down. So that's the whole point of this, is to get development costs and hosting costs down in the long run. All right, I'm going to pass this back off to Derek and let him take it from here.
So when talking about .NET Core development, you have a myriad of advantages at your disposal, especially from a developer perspective. They wouldn't give me 15 slides so that I could put all of the advantages that are possibly out there. So I had to kind of narrow it down to 11 that I myself have benefited from as we've moved more and more towards the .NET Core ecosystem at Lapero. The first one is it's cross-platform. Oh, that is so nice to be able to work in one code base and know that it's going to work on a Linux platform, a Windows platform, a Mac platform, and just be able to have the security of knowing about that. The flexibility allows our developers to build applications that run seamlessly across different operating systems. It expands our reach and our usability. The next is the improved performance that comes from the decoupled architecture. Like, .NET Core is optimized for performance. It's faster than the traditional .NET framework, as Russ said, particularly in web and cloud applications. The improved performance leads to a quicker response time in our applications, which is critical for user experience and allows us to scale really quickly. The decoupled architecture means that we can focus on our work in key areas of development without a fear of performance disruption elsewhere. It's modular and lightweight. .NET Core's modular nature means that the applications can include just the libraries and dependencies they actually need. This results in a smaller application footprint, which makes it easier to host, it makes it more efficient and easier for us to maintain in the long run. As Russ said, and we can't stress this enough, it's open source and it's community supported. Being open source, .NET Core benefits from this huge community that's very, very active. Developers can contribute to the framework. They access all of the shared knowledge from this huge community and leverage a wide array of third-party libraries and tools that are already created. It uses modern language features. I mean, .NET Core supports C#, F#, Visual Basic. These are modern object-oriented programming languages, as well as functional programming languages. These languages offer advanced features such as strong type checking, asynchronous programming, and language-integrated query support. It's container supported, as Russ mentioned with Docker. .NET Core works excellently with containers like Docker, which is a significant advantage for microservices architecture. When we're building out something, we want it to work in as small a footprint as possible. The containers allow for lightweight, consistent, and isolated environments for our applications, and it facilitates an easy deployment and scaling. It's also, the benefit also is that we get high quality tooling, like really nice. .NET Core is supported by development tools such as Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, but there's also third parties like Writer, which is also a very, very robust IDE. These integrated development environments provide excellent debugging, unit testing, and code navigation features. They enhance the developer productivity. Next, it's got a microservices architecture already. .NET Core is well suited for building microservices, allowing developers to create applications as this little suite of small independent services. Architecture is extremely scalable, and it makes our applications easier to build and maintain. Once again, it's unified the Web API and MVC frameworks as well. ASP NET Core unifies the development of MVC-based web applications and Web API. The simplification allows developers to build RESTful services and web applications within the same project. It streamlines our development process. As Alex mentioned, and Russ both did, there are strong security features that come built into .NET Core. It has a robust security mechanisms, which is crucial for building secure applications. And as Alex mentioned, we live in an era where I see a data breach daily. Compatibility with cloud services. .NET Core's integration with cloud platforms, especially Microsoft Azure, it's an ideal choice for developing cloud-based applications. It benefits from features like all of the scalability, the managed services, and cost effectiveness. Like I said, this is just a small sample of the advantages to be offered when migrating projects or sites to the .NET Core platform. I'm going to turn it over to Heather now to talk more about .NET Core and its role moving forward, though.
Thanks. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why .NET Core. Again, we want to explore its role as a future-proof approach. We heard a lot about this, but really from a tech stack perspective, .NET Core is really a future-proof framework that offers tons of options to deploy and develop on. The performance speed is excellent, and it allows you to blend different technologies, such as Microsoft Blazor, JS-based frameworks, such as React, Angular, and Vue. And by utilizing .NET Core as a technology, we can offer multi-tier Sitefinity platform architectures, where the front-end project is completely separate from the back-end system of Sitefinity. So to build with .NET Core, users must create a new ASP.NET Core application and install the respective Sitefinity.NET Core NuGet packages. And with this separation of concerns, developers can really focus on building templates and widgets a lot faster and more efficiently by leveraging .NET Core. The other tier is a standard Sitefinity instance, which is the traditional Sitefinity backend install. And that instance was is going to hold the backend content and creation experience. The ASP.NET Core front-end application communicates with that via a no data layer. Sitefinity.NET Core really supports the ability for we've supported it for a couple of years now, and we've seen a big uptake from our customers and partners, especially when it comes to new projects. So different data sources show that Sitefinity.NET Core is the preferred way for our partners and clients to develop websites with Sitefinity. With that adoption trajectory and all we've learned from it, it would likely be the official recommended Sitefinity.NET Core is now our recommended implementation moving forward for all customers and partners for new implementations. And if you're starting a new project, .NET Core, again, should be a no-brainer for you based on the information that you've heard today. .NET Core it's free, it's open source software development platform from Windows for Linux and Mac OS operating systems, and it's maintained by Microsoft. So for Sitefinity customers, this really means that they can develop and host their Sitefinity front-end application across different platforms without any limitations. It really provides a complete freedom to your developers. So let's go ahead and ask Lapero, can you talk a little bit more about any recent level of government websites or projects that you've implemented recently?
Yeah, I'll kind of step in, and Derek, you can fill in after I introduce this. But yeah, we're building a Sitefinity website for a county government website in Florida, and we're building it on Sitefinity Cloud, and we're using .NET Core and the .NET Core Renderer. And it was really important for our client to future-proof their solution. And also for us as a development team to be able to meet their needs and their deadlines. And the development process on .NET Core is far superior to the way traditionally we've been doing development on Sitefinity. And so if you've spent any time doing development on Sitefinity, we want to make t-shirts where it has the gears on it. And because every time you make a change to the code base, it reinitializes the application, and that can take, depending on the size of the database and other factors, 30 seconds, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, just kind of depends. So every time that happens and we reinitialize the website, our developers have to wait for that to happen. So not having that, not experiencing that is going to make a huge difference on development from that perspective. And then not only like a lot of the advantages that we've been talking about during this presentation, it's the performance, having a decoupled architecture, being able to be extremely fluid and extremely responsive to changes, and just having the performance that .NET Core offers with Sitefinity is going to be a game changer because it just doesn't require as much resources that a traditional .NET Sitefinity powered website would require. And there's a lot more development advantages when it comes to if you have a multiple developer team working on a .NET Core project. There's no longer a need to load the entire project and like entire resources on to your local development environment when you're doing development in this way. So that also increases a lot of the productivity and the efficiency when it comes to our development team. I don't know if there's anything else you want to offer, Derek, but that's kind of a summary of kind of what we've been experiencing with doing this project with a county government website, which is fairly large.
Yeah, Alex, the only thing that I would follow up with that on is just we've seen when it comes to the learning curve on Sitefinity, we know that the documentation is very robust on the progress site for Sitefinity, and it's the learning curve on the .NET Core Renderer is so small. It's easy for a developer who knows little to nothing about Sitefinity to just spin up extremely quick and go through the training, and the training is much easier to deal with. And because they're not dealing with the main, as we call it, the mothership site, they're dealing with just the renderer. It simplifies the development process, and it simplifies getting your developers up to speed.
Yeah, and just to kind of reiterate on top of what you said is we have that training available on our Sitefinity website. It's under Progress's Learning Center, so you can go there, register, and gain access to the .NET Core development and training sessions that are available. And they're nice, like 15-minute incremental videos that you can kind of walk through based on what you're trying to learn. So today, what I want to do is I also want to provide everybody with an overview of the .NET Core Renderer within Sitefinity and the benefits it provides, along with some implications you just may want to be aware of as you plan for your future. I'm assuming that our audience is maybe a mix of people who are new to Sitefinity or may not be aware of Sitefinity as a DX platform. But if you do use Sitefinity today, typically from a historical version perspective, if you're on an older version, you may be using web forms or MVC frameworks. So we're going to talk a little bit about the legacy and kind of how we've gotten to where we are today, and a little bit about that architecture. So again, before we dig into that full .NET Core renderer, I want to review the architecture of previous versions of Sitefinity. So prior to the availability of the .NET Core decoupled renderer, Sitefinity provided a two-tier architecture, which included a database and a single application with various modules and systems. And that included the native API and a tightly coupled rendering engine built on MVC framework to render and manage pages on the front-end site. Now, because all these components existed inside of one application, when making a change to the front end, you still needed to build the single application, deploy all the components together as one. And so, again, that's where you would start seeing the gears come up as you're trying to rebuild that application and wait for everything to be deployed. Let's go to the next slide. And so as newer versions of Sitefinity have been introduced, additional APIs have been added. And so a content API was added to support headless use cases where content can be managed in Sitefinity, but then surfaced into other applications through headless scenarios. Then a page meta model API was introduced, and this API actually describes pages themselves. So this includes what content is on the page, the widgets that are available on the page, as well as the structure of the page. So again, this API offers another layer of abstraction and allows other applications to understand not only the content, but also the structure of the page. And so the addition of this page meta model API really made the .NET Core renderer possible, since it could now consume content and page structure. And the APIs actually make the page rendering engine technology agnostic. You can have multiple types of front-end rendering engines. And I know we've talked a lot about .NET Core today. We certainly see all of those with, we'll develop more over time, and you're not limited to just web applications. So if you want to do like a single page application or something running natively on a mobile, they can consume the API data as well. So again, lots of options there. So this just kind of goes over what the architecture looks like today. So again, we now have a three-tiered architecture approach, which has several benefits overall. So first, you have faster development, since the .NET Core renderer stands alone as its own application. A small change to the front end means building and deploying a lightweight application, not the entire Sitefinity engine. And so this really means the front-end application can be reloaded in under a second in most cases. Upgrades will be easier as well, since everything is handled by NuGet packages and can be run from the CLI. And another benefit of the separation and isolation of roles, front-end developers can now focus on front-end coding, while content editors can focus on content creation in the Sitefinity engine. Now, a separation of the front end also makes it easier to scale. Various caching mechanisms improve the performance of the .NET Core renderer. And finally, developers really have more choices of development environments. So we talked about using Visual Studio Code, for example. That can be used with .NET Core. You're not required to use the full version of Visual Studio when working with the new rendering engine. So how to prepare for the future is what we want to talk about next. And so with ASP.NET, MVC framework will continue to be supported on Sitefinity for the foreseeable future. And in the next few slides, we'll kind of show you what that looks like. However, as I mentioned before, Progress is transitioning our focus to .NET Core and a decoupled front-end renderer. And as stated previously, we really strongly recommend migrating away from the traditional ASP.NET MVC framework towards an ASP.NET Core or other decoupled renderer of choice for new projects. Some options might be React, Angular, and we'll provide additional samples and options as we move forward. And because the rendering engine is new, you might be wondering how you can start to adopt it, and if you can use MVC pages alongside the new engine as you migrate to that new engine over time. So the simple answer to that is yes, you can. Now, in this example here, we'll example the page request lifecycle. In a standard Sitefinity implementation that we see here, a user makes a request to the page built with MVC or web forms, and Sitefinity receives the request and renders the page. The rendered page, made up of HTML, scripts, content, etc., is all returned to the browser where it is seen by a user. So this is what we would see in our traditional MVC framework that would be a traditional Sitefinity implementation that a lot of people are used to. Now, as we move on to the next slide, what we see here is a user requesting a .NET Core page. So again, this is our new decoupled renderer, and the .NET Core renderer receives the request for the page, and it turns and makes an API call. This call has an additional request header for XSF renderer proxy. When the Sitefinity engine receives the call with the header and the page, it's marked that it is an external renderer. So it will be returned as JSON. Now, Sitefinity returns a JSON from the content and page meta model APIs, where the page is constructed by the renderer, and then it's returned to the browser. So again, we're able to have that separate front-end renderer accessing the .NET Core pages that have been built through the CMS and returning them as JSON. But what happens if you also have existing MVC pages? So when you have a situation where you're using the .NET Core renderer, but also have some of those legacy pages available, the user is able to make a request for an MVC page. And the .NET Core renderer, understanding that the page is an MVC page, it really acts as a proxy to Sitefinity. The request is passed along, and this time, instead of returning JSON to the renderer, the actual rendered page, along with the HTML, script, content, etc., is returned to the .NET Core renderer, and then just passed back to the browser. So this process uses various caching methods, ensuring that little to no lag time on this proxied page exists. So basically what these last three slides show you is that you can have what I would refer to as a hybrid approach when you're moving forward with a migration. So if you're starting off new, it's great to go all out and go with .NET Core. But if you are coming from more of a traditional implementation of Sitefinity, you have some different options available to you. So again, this would be that hybrid approach option where you don't do everything all at once, but instead you can migrate over time your pages to that new renderer. So that was kind of what I wanted to go over, just so you get a feel for what your options are. Again, you can always do a rebuild if you wanted to, but that option is available to kind of do a slower migration over time as well. So at this point, I think we want to wrap up with some questions. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can go ahead and respond to those questions. So I think the first question here, I kind of just responded to. It was asking how, if someone has a legacy, implementation of Sitefinity, how easy is it to migrate? And again, you can take your existing implementation and implement a .NET Core renderer for the front end, and then again, it's used as a proxy to the back end. So it's fairly easy to set it all up and start working with an existing implementation without having to rebuild the entire thing and then do that slow migration over.
Great. Okay. Do you see the second one?
Yep. So the second question I see here is, is there any performance differences? Russ, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one. From a performance standpoint, it is astronomically different. It's night and day. You're talking anywhere between like 50 to 400% increase in the number of transactions for a CPU call, depending on the size of your application. So you're pretty much good. You're guaranteed to get a performance boost, especially that's gonna affect your SEO scores. But no questions asked. It's gonna happen. Did I answer it?
Yes, thank you very much. All right, so the next question I see are, let me see. What are hosting options for .NET Core sites? And what are the requirements? And then here's a question regarding a Sitefinity Cloud. So I know you guys are in the process of doing a Sitefinity Cloud implementation. Alex, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as far as the hosting options, for a .NET Core site, since it's cross-platform and since it is open source, there are a lot of different options. We choose to use Microsoft Azure for our .NET Core applications, and then a lot of our clients that are looking at mission-critical websites that need an SLA for their uptime. And for the availability, we choose to use Sitefinity Cloud with the .NET Core Renderer, as we are for this county website. That just affords us the ability to leave the hosting of the actual application, the renderer, and the support to Progress, and then our development team can focus on development. And we've gone in both directions where we host it in Azure ourselves. And we have a DevOps team, and Russ leads it to where we support those. But some of these larger websites where they have very stringent requirements when it comes to SOC 2 Type 2 or any type of security requirements that they need a lot of additional support or additional uptime guarantees, we'll choose to go that route. And it's been a really great experience. We have several websites that are on Sitefinity Cloud. A lot of them are traditional hosting, which we are looking to transition over to .NET Core just because of the performance differences. And as we have been preparing, to be candid, for this presentation, we really kind of talked internally about a lot of the different website and opportunities to do transitions over, because the transition is so much easier. The upgrades are easier, as Heather had mentioned, than just the traditional Sitefinity website upgrades. So we're really excited as a company to move in that direction, but there are a lot of hosting options when it comes to .NET Core and in regards to Sitefinity or a .NET Core app that you might build yourself.
And how do you feel about working with the Sitefinity Cloud team? Is it something that you work with them during the initial configuration to get everything set up in the web application firewall and any keys or anything that need to be set up? What was your experience working with them?
Yeah, so there's an onboarding process that's really great that they go through. There's meetings that we have to kind of onboard the team, asking what the development team looks like, setting up access, and then setting up Azure DevOps, which is what Sitefinity Cloud uses for their CI/CD process. And what's been really great about Sitefinity Cloud, the cloud team, is everything's really set up for you. So we use Azure DevOps for our project management and for our agile pipeline, or our agile project management methodology, and our work items and our sprint planning. So naturally, it kind of flows right into Azure DevOps when it comes to the Sitefinity Cloud site. And then all of our build and release processes are all tied into the cloud. Also, the cloud team has created pipelines for invalidating the cache, and for doing database backups and doing database exports, and doing lots of different functions that we would task Russ to create for us. So it takes some load off of our internal DevOps team to have to create all of those, and they give us the necessary access to be able to execute those. And so it's been really great having the flexibility of having the cloud team as kind of a secondary DevOps team to supplement us. And it's been really smooth in a lot of instances with support and with a lot of the requests that we make, and the ability to do deployments. The deployments are instantaneous. We do a deployment. We have no downtime, which is really great for our customers as well. So it's been a really good experience.
Oh, that's good to hear. So I think we have time for one final question. And the last question that I see in here is, can you use .NET Core for mobile app development in conjunction? Can you display content on multiple platforms in different ways? Did somebody on the Lapero side want to respond to that?
I can take that. Because of the way that Sitefinity and .NET Core are integrated with the .NET Core renderer, utilizing the REST APIs, it's extremely easy to reuse your content across multiple platforms. That includes mobile development. because you have access to all of not only the metadata for a page, but also all of the content that's available, you can easily plug it into some mobile application that you develop on your side.
Great, thank you. So, just to wrap up, again, we just wanted to share what we've learned about working with .NET Core and working with .NET Core within a Sitefinity implementation, working with the new 3-tier architecture that's available, what the migration process might look like if you're moving away from the traditional implementation using the MVC framework that's more of a 2-tiered architecture to that 3-tiered architecture, and really how you can future-proof your implementation for your website. So thank you everybody for joining us. Did anybody have any last words? Go ahead, Charlene.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I do have a couple questions.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know that were answered. So there's one person that is asking, we are web form shop. Should you go to MVC or Core? Which one works best?
Yeah, I would say from a future-proof situation, I would say .NET Core is the way to go. If you do want to move towards MVC, you can certainly do so. We mentioned the hybrid approach as well. So prior to upgrading, if you're on Sitefinity right now, you want to make sure that you upgrade to a version that supports web forms and MVC, so you can do that migration to MVC, or you want to go ahead and do a rebuild with .NET Core. And from the Lapero side, as an implementation partner, what would your recommendations be?
I would.
Go ahead, Alex.
Go ahead. I won't interrupt. Go ahead.
As a developer who has worked in not only the web forms world, the MVC, and now the .NET Core, I would go ahead and push always towards .NET Core using the latest with Sitefinity, because you're going to get the best support not only from the documentation and the feature set that's getting pushed forward, you're also going to have longer term support on those types of things.
Yeah, and I was going to kind of say the same thing from a business perspective, looking at, go with the highest level or with the most latest technology that you can afford to go with. And I think that's going to pay dividends in the long run when you're talking about just what Derek said, future proofing and the support, and then the performance too. A lot of clients that we work with, it would be doing them a disservice if we told them, oh yeah, just go ahead and go into the middle tier, and then in a year or two, then you're going to have to, transition again. I think, making the transition from one technology to the latest technology would probably be the best solution. You're going to see a major difference in the features, the functionality, the support. Like Derek mentioned, the documentation is a big deal, and you want to make sure that you're building something that's going to last and it's going to be able to be just an asset for your company as long as possible.
I would totally agree with that.
Can I make another statement?
Yeah.
Having done all of these technologies, the difference between MVC and .NET Core is so minuscule, you might as well just go all the way to .NET Core.
Mm-hmm.
Because by the time you do the MVC, you're already almost at .NET Core anyway. So from a developer standpoint, just take the jump.
Yep. And just for anybody that's interested, we do have a LTS or long-term solution versions of the product that we support. So every, so many releases will have an LTS that's made available that's going to be supported over a period of time. So if you are in a transition period, I do encourage you to go to the Progress website and look up Sitefinity long-term solutions, or LTS, and that will give you our life cycle for the different versions that we have out there with regards to support and the different stages within that support cycle and life cycle that we have.
Great.
Charlene, did you have other questions?
I do. I have a couple for you, Heather, I believe. So one is about authentication for Sitefinity CMS. It looks like it has server 3 identity. Where will there be an update or upgrade soon in this area? Sorry, tongue-tied.
Sorry, I had a hard time understanding the question. Can you say that one more time?
Authentication uses server 3. Identity Server 3. Will there be any upgrades? Do you know
I'll
any?
have to try to follow up on that one. I'm not sure.
So
I'd have to look.
Okay. All right.
I actually have some insight on this as
Oh,
far as
good.
I use Identity Server in all of our backend stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that Identity Server 4 is the one that we typically use with .NET Core, which is also built on .NET Core.
Mm-hmm.
So Microsoft has bought it and rolled it up into its .NET framework. So depending on what version of .NET Core is being supported, will probably determine which version of the Identity Server is being supported.
Awesome.
anything else?
Yeah. Do we have any?
Lots of good questions.
I know. Do we have any sites showing examples of .NET Core? Jordan, does your team have an example currently, or are you just working on one right now?
I think the most current, up to date site that we're working on with the county government that we referenced earlier is, the latest and greatest approach. So we're in the process, as we mentioned earlier, of kind of getting a transition plan for our clients and to updating them to .NET
Yeah,
Core.
we kind of waited a little bit and watched, and until we saw that .NET Core implementation Sitefinity was as mature as possible from a business standpoint to look at. And so we that was a while ago that we saw that, and we were kind of waiting for a client to come in that could take advantage of it. And so this is the first one. We've used .NET Core internally for our own internal tools for quite some time now. But as far as Sitefinity's implementation of using .NET Core and the .NET Core Renderer for a project, that will be the first one, which is going to be launching later this year. So.
And for our public one that we have, we also have a case study on it on our website, is Dart. So if you wanted to look up Dart, Dart wanted to migrate from a classic ASP to Sitefinity.NET Core. So they had gone through a project to do that. And so if you look on our website for Progress Sitefinity and just look up DART, so they are based, I believe, out of Texas. And they, Dallas area, and they're a rapid transit service for the Dallas area, and they serve citizens of Northern Texas. But that's a great site to look at. That is one of the more recent .NET Core implementations that's public that I'm aware of.
Great. I have another question that says, if we currently have 20 Sitefinity sites, do we have to set up 20 sites, or can you use a renderer?
You can use the renderer similar to setting it up. So the renderer also works with a multi-site implementation. So do they have 20 sites separately, I guess would be my question, or are they using multi-site today? And in the end, they could set up Sitefinity with multi-site implementation, and they can still use the renderer, the .NET Core renderer to manage those different multiple sites in the same backend user interface.
Okay, hopefully we answered that question correct.
I think we did. That's a pretty standard question.
Okay, good. So once we migrate traffic through the new core renderer, the Sitefinity backend through core renderer, can't modify any of the legacy pages, correct?
Once you start using the .NET Core renderer, you can have a hybrid approach where your legacy pages, if they remain on MVC framework, for example, you can still manage them the same way that you do today. And it would be like you have your existing implementation in that two-tier architecture for any MVC pages. And then any new pages would use the templates and widgets managed through the .NET Core renderer. So you can have a hybrid approach where you can continue to manage those MVC pages. Again, we encourage you to kind of migrate over to .NET Core, but you certainly can host both MVC pages and .NET Core pages in the same implementation and continue to manage them and update them as you want. There's no limitation there.
Great. And another question is, we have 30 modules built with Module Builder. Is there any easy way to transition them to .NET Core?
Yeah, so and guys, if you want to pitch in, I'm going to put my answer in, but you may also, based on your experience, have some response to this. But your modules don't necessarily change with .NET Core. What you will need to do is create new widgets. But the nice thing about the new .NET Core renderer is that a single widget can actually map to multiple modules. So you don't have to create a separate widget for every single module that you're working with. You can actually have one module, like a list-based, a list-based widget that works with multiple modules as well. You may still have instances where you need a separate, custom widget, for example, but when we're talking about modules, that's typically list-based content that you're going to render either in list or grid format and then have a detail view. And those you probably would need to create your .NET Core widgets for those, but again, it's not having to recreate them all. And we do come with a lot of out-of-the-box widgets that would map to those as well. So the rework, I would say, is not as extensive as you might think. And then Lapero, did you guys have any experience with that so far?
I would basically say the exact same thing you did, Heather. It's the simplification on building widgets for the modules, not having to build out all of those individually, has just it's greatly improved our ability, our workflow as far as building out new sites.
It's good to hear. Any other questions, Charlene? We got a few minutes left.
I do. I'm so sorry.
No, this is good. This is I'm so happy to have all the interaction. That means people have been listening.
Is Progress planning on updating the back end to .NET Core as well?
I don't know what I can't say as far as our roadmap goes. I do know that we're looking at rewriting the back end, whether it's going to be on .NET Core or Angular or some other technology. I can't say. I don't have the details on that, but I do know that that is something that they're looking at doing at some point. I'm sure it's probably in the works behind the scenes, but I don't have any specifics on it at this point in time.
Great. Also, is there any documentation anywhere on how to start on hybrid migration paths?
Yes, so we actually have some information on that. There's on our website, we have our Learning Center, and there's actually some information around that within the Learning Center. So I would definitely go to our Learning Center. Maybe Charlene, with this, when we publish the site, I'm assuming we're going to put it somewhere live. We might be able to put a link to our online training. That's the on-demand training, which actually has a section that kind of talks through the hybrid approach.
Great. We'll put that on the thank you note. I have another question asking if we're working with partner vendors to coordinate updating software. This person is thinking of e-commerce as an example. I'm sure there are others. Are we working with our technical vendors to make sure that they have the current .NET Core?
I'm sorry, that's a hard question. So they're currently have e-commerce with Sitefinity and they're looking to upgrade?
I'm guessing so.
So if you currently have, for instance, e-commerce with Sitefinity, I would probably reach out to your implementer to talk to them and then have them reach out to Sitefinity and probably schedule a meeting to talk about strategy. So for instance, I would recommend Lapero being on that call if it was one of their customers, as well as a Sitefinity sales engineer, so that we have all parties involved kind of walk through a suggested route to take when you have something like that involved. Because I do know, for example, with e-commerce, they're kind of changing their platform right now where they're going to, I want to say, almost be decoupled from Sitefinity, where they had a deeper level of integration there. They're going to change that. So there's a lot of factors in that particular example. So it's really example based. So I couldn't say that for every single thing as far as different integrations that we have. One other thing to mention is we do have a new integration hub based on Workato, which is an iPaaS application. So if you do have kind of low code, no code integrations where you're trying to pass information from Sitefinity, like forms or something, out to an external application, there's some lightweight integrations there that can be done through Workato. And again, we call it the integration hub because it's built. We built that on top of Workato, but that's something that is of interest. So there are different ways to perform integrations, but that particular one's a pretty heavy integration right now. So that one I would definitely recommend a call.
Great. I'll just do one more question, and any other follow-up we can do in email.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. If we are planning to go to Sitefinity Cloud, would you recommend moving to cloud first and then .NET Core transition?
Lapero, what would you recommend in that situation? I would almost, it depends on if you're on a version that's supported by cloud readily. The cloud team typically likes you be either on an LTS, like a long-term supported solution, or the latest version. If you're on one of those, you can certainly migrate to cloud and then do your update. It's kind of either one. Chicken before the egg really doesn't matter in that situation. But if you are on a much older version, I would definitely recommend an upgrade as part of that. I would recommend probably doing your upgrade and migration first, and then going to cloud. But Lapero, what's your opinion on that as a partner that does implementation? I'm more of a sales engineer, so I'm telling you from the sales engineer perspective, but I think it's great to hear from an actual implementation partner on live experiences that they've had.
Yeah, I would definitely get them onto the most current version that they can get onto. There are some specific requirements to be on Sitefinity Cloud that that you need to have, and there are some modifications that need to be done to the project in order to get it fully supported in cloud, which the cloud team does help facilitate. There is a guide as well that they give you and your development team to be able to go by to prepare. There's like a prepare for cloud document that they give you, and it's all of the steps that need to be taken to get your project and your site ready to go into Sitefinity Cloud. With that said, you definitely need to be on a supported version, so getting it to that first. And so I would upgrade it first in the current environment, make sure you haven't introduced any new bugs or new issues or problems. And then once that's satisfied, your testing is all passed, and everyone is signed off on it, then kind of getting it to move into the cloud. That way you know if there's a problem, it wasn't introduced by the upgrade or wasn't introduced by some kind of incompatibility. So
I think that's
a lot of great questions. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely. And if there are any additional questions that we have not answered, I will make sure to follow up with Heather so she can help answer any questions, or Lapero staff if it's pointed towards them. But we'd love to say thank you from Lapero and Sitefinity for joining today, and look forward to talking to you again in the next couple months on our next bi-monthly partner webinar series. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.